Earls is an adult artist from Oklahoma and a participant in reviving one of North America's great ceramic traditions. He earned a bachelor's in fine arts from the Savannah College of Art and Design and began exploring clay by working with Caddo and Potawatomi artist Jerry Redcorn, who was responsible for revitalizing customary Caddo pottery during the early 1990s. Earls has expanded his creative practice to incorporate Indigenous Futurisms alongside adaptations of ancestral Caddo pieces. He currently resides in Ada, Oklahoma, and has participated in exhibitions, including the Contemporary and Indigeneity exhibits at the Great Plains Museum, Caddo Contemporary, Present and Relevant at the Cole Art Centers in Nacogdoches, Spyro and the Art of the Mississippian World at the Western Heritage and National Cowboy Museum in Oklahoma City, the Art Now 2021 exhibit at Oklahoma Contemporary in Oklahoma City, and Contemporary Native Pottery and Indigenous to Arkansas at the Crystal Ridge Museum of American Art. His award-winning art is included in numerous museum collections, including the Autry Museum of the American West, the Sam Noble Museum, the Dallas Museum of Art, the Gilcrease Museum, and the Caddo Mountain State Historical Site, amongst others. It has been a privilege to work with Chase on this exhibit, and we've enjoyed his workshops over the last couple of days. And we will be conducting a firing this afternoon at the Art Annex. I will also add that Chase really came through for us as we were working on this project, and we needed professional photographs of various works for the catalogs, and he has been so helpful and so many titles for making this exhibit. So thank you.
All right. My name is Chase Earls, Chase Collin Earls. I just want to say hello. And we have a little less than an hour. The subject that can take probably about 20 hours to talk about. So we are going to do a really fast crash course. My presentation is like about 2 or 3 hours long, so we're going to go through it really fast. Also, because of the time, I almost certainly will probably leave things out that probably need to not be tested out. I'm going to do my best. I don't prepare speeches ever. I just shoot from the head what I know and what I feel at the time. So, I'm Caddo from the Caddo Nation. And I always give people usually background about my culture and our tribe's cultural identity, just for some context, but we're going to run through that real quick. Caddos are part of Mississippian, which is it's a regional category, not a cultural, exactly different tribe. So Mississippi, but it's a regional thing. We're a very ancient tribe. It shows that if you're a recap on you want to talk, it's like our evolved from the Caddo. That's how ancient we are. It shows our homeland. This is Arkansas, Oklahoma, this is Louisiana. We're a mound building tribe. Those huge mound centers, one on the top. Let's go get by comparison. We have one called Battle Mound, it's just big. Our ancient corns come directly from the south, it's from Mesoamerica. And, these are some of the rivers in Texas that we live around. Our mount, we were a confederacy of, sometimes between 12 and 18 different tribes. Caddo, the namesake's from Caddo-Hadacha, but the other tribes, Hadacha and Natchitoches back in the This is actually pronounced Natchitoches, Louisiana, and so trade relations with Cahokia. These are Caddo plots that are actually found at Cahokia. So there's, a lot of people know that outdated word of Anasazi is the ancient ones now. We traded with them, and we were around before them. I still didn't look up whether it was Aztec or Maya. We were around before the Aztecs, and we had extensive arts, pottery being one of the main ones, but also river cane basketry, which we revived recently. This is the Spyro exhibition. Spyro, very briefly, is my personal belief. Is an import from Mesoamerica that we allowed to live because of kinship terms in our area. So they were brother, think about kinship terms. With Caddos, you had to be related. Part of what is NAC today, Native American Church, stems from some of the beliefs of the ancient Caddo. So it's a very integral religion today. So I want to get into Indigenous Futurism, and I'll show some of my pieces first. So I started out, so I'm going to talk about Indigenous Futurism through my experience. There's many experiences and many definitions, but Indigenous Futurism is called, I'm going to refer to it as IF from now on, so I get tongue-tied. It started, I really believe, with some main artists, including Virgil Ortiz. But there's some other really well-known artists that started too, but and it was through ceramics with him. But it's not just a ceramic art movement. It really come around recently. They had a large exhibition, I think it was in Arizona, that had a lot of Indigenous artists presenting their work there. And there's even a book. So there's a book I'll show at the end. It's called Indigenous Futurisms by several different authors, showing a lot of different examples. And really that's probably going to be way more definitive than what I'm talking about. But my work stems from that. One of the authors of that IF book was Chelsea Hare, who also authored parts in the catalog that you guys have. So, very briefly, Caddo pottery is extremely ancient practice, ceramic practice. It stems back to a specific cultural identity of around 700, 800 AD, but we have pottery just before that. When I started, I'm not going to get into where I came from and all that kind of stuff, because really Indigenous Futurism is the extension of where I am not really my work. But I, for the most part, for the last over 15 years, mostly did very, very traditional pottery. And by traditional, which means something different for everyone. That means I go and hand dig the clay, I go hand collect the mussel shell, I go crush it up and process it, a very tedious process. I meticulously hand build these very thin, between 1 and 2 millimeters thin. And they're sanded, burnished over 3 times, and then pit fired the whole way. And what we say pit fire, but really it's just an open ground wood fire. So it's a bonfire. And then they're engraved after their fires. So a lot of my pieces end up looking almost exactly like our ancestors' pieces because they were pretty much made the exact same. The reason I chose to go this route in the beginning was because me wanting to firstly reconnect with my tribe and its culture, but also reestablish for our tribe what is our really ancient ancestral practices for us that is so huge. And then that would be the context and the basis, the foundation to move forward. I've always been an artist and I always wanted to push boundaries and stuff. So, but I also feel like it's very important to have a foot and a basis in our ancestral, so you can understand really what it is. You got to understand what it is, what you are, and where you came from in order to move forward. These are important because it shows the kind of language context of Caddo effigy pots, all of our forms that we have, very distinctive pottery tradition and shapes, so that you can understand where I can go with this for Indigenous Futurism. So after having done lots of traditional work and, there's obviously there's a subset of people that are interested in collecting ancient style or ancestral style or traditional Caddo pottery. And one of my main goals is to educate the public about our culture. Caddo is just so underrepresented and misunderstood or not understood at all that it even exists, that I just took it on as my purpose to try to teach as many people, hey, we're here, so I needed to get a larger audience. And I struggled with that. So people, I joke now, but I will always be continuing to make traditional pottery, but there's not everybody's really interested in those ancient style pieces that we have. And like I said in the catalog, I don't copy our ancient pieces. I really do reinterpret using what I've learned as our catalog language of design and shape to make my own pieces. Because I'm not making reproductions. I'm making contemporary examples of what would be our evolution. So naturally, I started venturing out into more statement pieces, conceptual pieces, and storytelling pieces, using the language, that dictionary of countercultural identity, into styles that I probably could continue, over and over and over again, and made a whole series of, but quickly got interested in this new art movement, Indigenous Futurisms. So, it was when I was allowed into the gallery, acquired, I guess, by the gallery, King's Gallery in Santa Fe. I started talking to Charles King about the whole terminology of traditional versus contemporary or modern or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of problems there. So I've been noticing the IF movement and was a big Star Wars fan. And because Kaitos made effigy pieces, and the reason we made effigy pieces of animals or people or objects is to revere those objects. And so it only made sense that, as a Kaito, I could create any object, person or animal, as a ceramic vessel. And that's the key for me, is that it is a vessel. It is carrying something, whether that's an idea or a feeling or a story or culture. And so creating objects of contemporary culture and pop art or science fiction or current mainstream media was a way to encapsulate those feelings or those ideas into a vessel. So I always describe IF in my terms as cultural reclamation and aggressive education of Indigenous futurism. And I say this because I've learned that it really does offend some people, believe it or not. So there's many tenets of what is the IF movement. We're not really going to go over them, so I'll just go with the main tenets of what is IF. And the main thing that I think is smacks the face of everybody immediately is most of what you see is based on Star Wars. But that's not what IF is at all. It is just one of the available, modes of transportation for this art movement. So that first tenet is really about the time and space of what is Native American art. And so, as the name might suggest, IF is really about the future, but it's not just the future. It's really more about the past, that's an ancient or the not so distant past, the present, our experiences from that, generational trauma, what we live in now as our experience, and how we see ourselves as Native people moving forward, in the short term, and then how that might play out in the distant future. So it is all time and space put together into one. I think that's one of the main things that people should understand. So I think that's one of the more important tenets about IF. It's about trying to talk to people about these subjects, but it's not just a linear motion. I've heard someone define that as, a colonized way of thinking. I don't know about that, but there's a lot of modes of thinking. But for me, IF is about the entire temporal space. So to bring up Star Wars again, and one of the main tenets of Indigenous futurism is reclamation of culture, pop culture, mainstream media, and what us as Native people have lived through as our experience. So Star Wars is just the most easiest for most everyone to relate to. And it has a lot of reasons why Star Wars is used over, other TV shows or movies or cultural media. And I want to say there's more than that, like social media kind of stuff, games and video games and even old TV shows or reruns or anything like that. Toys is another. But the reason why Star Wars is used so much is because I think they're the ones that stand out the most as being a modern day mainstream media that actually appropriated Native culture. So it's the immediate one that gets used in order to transform back into Native culture and then reprocessed and then put back out to show that what our culture is really, and that it is our culture, and that we're still here and we're living, community, and so it's an easy way to take that, their cultural appropriation, turn it around, and make something good out of it. So I think that's why Star Wars is used so much. But it's not about just taking imagery of Star Wars and just saying, this is, Indian Darth Vader. That's not what it's about at all. You'll see sometimes young artists coming up and I've seen these stickers. It's like Grogu with a feather. That's not what it is about making a statement about that temporal space. What does that mean? What would that Grogu with the feather really mean? So I think that there's a lot of young artists learning what the tenets of it is and coming to terms with it and then growing and then figuring out, oh, there's more to it. I can make more of an important statement about it. So it's about making those statements, telling the stories of your experiences, which leads me to one of the other tenets, and that is a good example of starting that out is I took what everybody calls Katawuda. I named Shinisi, which is the Cattle word for spiritual leader or priest, to the Autry movement. It was purchased by the Autry's in their current collection right when we walked in, and it's going to be in the upcoming Getty Foundation PSDR Indigenous Futurism exhibition in September. It's going to be a pretty good one. But when they did this and they started posting on social media and announcing it, and while I was there at the show, you wouldn't believe how many nasty or honestly ignorant comments that I got, and that the Autry got. One of the main ones was Gene Autry would be rolling in his grave. They all kind of laughed at it. And I had people come to me and be like, this is not Native art. And so one of the tenets of IF is that as a young one, Native person growing up in this modern day era, you will grow up in American culture and you are consuming it and you are living it and it is your experience. So therefore, it is Native culture also. What the Native person perceives as this culture and then turns around and lives is, a product of our culture. So anything that Native people would watch also then becomes part of our Native culture and how we perceive the world around us and how we relate that to our experiences. So whether good through most of the Star Wars stuff or bad through the old black and white westerns with the wood and the TV. It gets, it's funny because then that media gets assimilated through Kados and spit back out as Native culture. That's one of the other major tenets of IF. So sometimes the pieces can be a little offensive, but it's not my intent and it's not what I have. I guess that's what's coming out. That's what we get, right? But these are all based on tenets of Caddo, ancient, culture and pottery culture. So I'll back up. So Caddos did head pots. Now, Caddos didn't do head pots like the sacred qualified head pots. We only did a few. So they weren't, revered the same way. So, of course, helmets from Star Wars worked really well. And there's the little Grogu. This was probably my first work when I was trying to understand really what IF was, and they were commissions. But really, what really jumped it off was a series of shows I did for King Galleries. The first show, which I did, we had talked about how we can pair pieces together to show the contrast, but also the relationship between what is, the ancient ancestral Caddo pottery, like the one on your right, or, its IF counterpart, why it means it so. This one's titled Gourd Friend, because a lot of the Caddo pottery was based off of the bottle gourds, and that's what Mediator reminds me of, but also as a vessel again, and taking on the patterns of Caddos is rolling water, which is what the DBA did all the time, roll around. So we want to try to impart meanings and special meanings and create something new from it. How would you remember the title for this one? This is one of the other parents, but the ancient pieces of tripod. We did many of those, and R2 is a tripod, but he's also a seed pod. So he's carrying, the little seeds of knowledge, if anything about the Star Wars series, and so in that same way, Caddos are carrying the seeds of their future in these seed pods. It's like a little holding pot, shake out seed. This one almost speaks for itself as the father. Just like some of the head pods, were our father ancestors. Talked about the Shemisi as our priest, was our spiritual leader and wise one and elder, so that was pretty easy. But he was built, this piece, I wish I had another slide, but based on the sculptures that we find in Cahokia. So in Cahokia Mountain in St. Louis, they would build out of red flint clays. I think they were more sculptures for, ceremony or for ritual. And, but they originated there. After the Cahokia went its way, or whatever they ended up doing, these spiritual items then came down and became part of Caddo culture. And they were then created into pipes, actually. So as you can see on this guy on the left, he has a feather mantle on, a cape in the back. And that's something very specific to our Mississippi and Southeastern tribes. So this Yoda that you can't see does have the feathered mantle on the back. They're all garnished and polished. And Caddo style necklace and the ear schools for the priests and the caddy, the chiefs of the tribe. Here's another example of a flying, vehicle with the bird effigy. This one is really, again, self-explanatory. The defeat of imperialism or colonialism, being shot by arrows. They run by on their horses, and then being in modern day, they also defeated it with the land back. I think this one is in the Snipe Museum of Notre Dame. I think they're rebuilding their buildings. I'm not sure it's on public display. This is one of the first walks I did. This isn't made of porcelain. Again, maybe offensive to some. No disrespect. It just found this one made itself. Obviously, I'm Caddo and not Pueblo, but I do have connections to Pueblo culture via one of our family friends, Crisito Romero's house. She was really good friends with my great uncle, General Scott Donald, and we visited them all the time, my family. And we would talk a bit about, Catholicism versus, Pueblo. It was incredible that there were some that would go to the Catholic Church and then some that would go to the Cuban Church. So we had a lot of conversations about that. But this one ended up being the walking Imperial Catholic Dominion. But it is paired there with, a version of a very traditional four-leg. This one is in the Minneapolis Institute of Art. Another example we have. This is the example that I made to honor our family friend, Crisito Romero. It's a jaw wall walker that looks just like the Adobe House building. And that is her door specifically recreated, her little turquoise door, thinking about that. And every time we were there, she was there selling her wares, like $2. So this one in the foreground is an example of a very traditional cabin flat style platform pipe. The landscape in back is a pipe. The hole being the front nose and the seats being the bowl. I think that one's more just for fun. This is a piece that really, I think, made an impression on a lot of people. So there's a story within the cabin. It's an origin story where it came from, and it has a character in it called Mr. Moon, Samish. And if you know Star Wars, when they first see this building, they say, "Oh, that's no moon." Well, we use that, to bring attention to Mr. Moon, who, if we turn the piece around, in our origin story, is climbing up out of the ground. And leading all of the people up out of the underground into the top plane in the ground world where we live today. So this is about the origin stories of Catalyst, but again, bringing attention to its relationship, and people can more easily, but like how many people are going to look at this, long ancient story? Maybe a good amount, but now young people that are going to be impressed by it are going to pay a lot more attention to it, or read, and maybe even indirectly, like they just like the piece because it's cool looking or something, but then they're absorbing a little bit of that historic and cultural identity knowledge. But then later they're going to go, "Oh yeah." I wanted to show some other artists that are involved with Indigenous people. One of them is a friend of mine. His name's Ryan Singer. He's an amazing artist. He's in the granddaughter of Santa Fe. He does exhibitions all over the country. So he's a painter, obviously, but these are some of his examples of IF. Just one of the Star Story, crafting it out of that. I love this. I apologize that I don't know the title of this piece. Virgil Ortiz pieces. This is some of his early works. Started out with vessels, but I think being Cochiti, one of their main things was figures. I can't remember if they call them like profound figures. I don't want to say anything about his culture. But that's kind of what he started with. But as you can see, we're going very IF route, which was very traditionally made. And of clay, and of pigments, vegetable dyes, and smoke pit fire with all of it. Here's some more of virtual Ortiz. Cara Romero is a photographer. This is probably one of the main pieces going to be featured in California at the Autry about Indigenous futures. So those are some links. I should have done shortly for you guys. If you go to the Autry side, you can look up the exhibits coming up, or you go to PSD, Getty Foundation, you can look up the exhibition that's coming up. So I want to recommend a couple of books. So this one on the left here is probably the best book you can get for Caddo. Culture and Cultural Identity, written by Cecil Elkins Carter, Cecile. And it's it's about our culture from the beginning to the end, up to present day, through the eyes of Caddo. And then on the right is the Indigenous Futurisms. Well, I think that gives you a really well-rounded look at the art movement. I did want to save some time for question and answer and keeping your time slot. I could go on, as probably some of you know, but my voice is getting hurt, and so if there are any questions, definitely we can talk about it. That is I in a nutshell.
I kind of have a question.
Yeah.
I do stuff with disability studies and futurisms. So the reason why I do it is because when we look at science fiction, like people with disabilities, Indigenous people, we're not in it. And so like the lack of representation kind of tells us that in the future we're not included. And how do you feel about that? Like,
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah,
that would be a really perfect example of starting to show that, starting to include that in the art, for people to relate to. Okay.
Yeah.
What you see in the future, is also a reflection of how you're behaving around people today, or treating people, or getting along, or what you're acknowledging, or what you're not acknowledging today. So yeah, I think that's actually a perfect example of what can be included in something like IF, for sure.
Well, no, I just find it interesting because it's it's all about possibilities.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And
it's kind of molding what you see in the future. So if you need, and making that, even if it's smack to the face of people, making it present and yeah, really good. Okay, I got quick. Let's do it. I'm sorry. Yes. Not that quick.
So, I've done a project book and good fish read. Can you give me a sort of timeline of the development of this idea of IF, the early?
It would be rough. I think it was, I want to say 3 years ago. Some in here might know.
So very new.
Pretty recent. I think Virgil O'Keeffe started doing this, not maybe longer before that, but I think what really kicked it off was the big exhibition they had at Arizona. I wish I could remember where they had that exhibition. But they had like an R2D2 there that was fully functional, but he was painted, I think it was the Acoma style. And I think that exhibition really kicked it off for the whole country. It might have been brewing within some public communities there beforehand, but yeah, very, very, very new. I think there's one. I think he has Tom Paris has a painted El Camino, but it has it's awesome. I think that's part of it. Some artists do stuff; it overlaps. So some artists might be doing installation work or conceptual pieces, but it can fit within my head very easily. So some don't even know. They're not intending to do it, but it's definitely a pretty powerful movement. I think it's not going to go away.
I was curious, in some ways this is about projecting like a native presence in the future, right? In an optimistic way.
Yeah.
Is there also an aspect of IF that is sort of imagining a future that is less positive, like a warning almost? Like Will Wilson's work, or is that part of?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I can't think of anything exactly right off of any existing stuff like that. I do look at some of Virgil Ortiz's. He's developed entire stories and narratives around it, and he has these warriors that are fighting for, the culture and all that kind of stuff, or fighting the new revolutions that the public do that. And I'm sure that's creating a new positive future for them, but I think he's one of the only ones who's created the entire picture of his lines. Yeah, exactly. But I think more people should. But I think it's really what you want to make it. I think there's lots of different ways you could go. And certainly every artist that I know kind of claims does have a different perspective about it. But there's just some tenets that definitely stand for all, and helps those that are beginning or are interested in it to know. Right? So. Ben?
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about and that I find really interesting is thinking through different temporalities. And it's something that you bring up, for example, in Star People, which is in the exhibition.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you think about time, how it intersects with category worldviews, and then how that becomes woven into the work.
Yeah. Well, it really kind of boils down to the statement I made before, because what happened in the past is really what shapes our future, depending on how we interpret it or how we let it happen or how we act or enact, right? And that's the basis for IF and create those conversations. But as I said, it really is not about just futuristic technology. It's not really just about science fiction. It is also about, like I said, pop culture, but also things that came, what was the mainstream culture in the 20s or the 40s or the 30s that natives lived through? So it includes them, You have to be a certain age to work in this media. But also it's the idea that some of the things that you can create to help express IF don't have to be futuristic representations. They can be, based on your ancient or ancestral. You want to use the voice and the foundation of your ancient ancestors. And like I said, that's kind of the basis of my art as a foundation. Go a different direction, a la Maria Martinez, and that enforced some standards or something. They created a linear path for what ceramics or pottery, by extension, has gone on in certain circles or markets today. It's kind of driven a linear path, and I think this is also an attempt to escape that. I don't know how well that should be received, 5 years ago or so, right? So it's kind of breaking out of that, you're either making traditional or contemporary kind of deal, which, has a lot of problems with the terminology. So, yeah, that's encapsulating the past, saying this is where we came from, and then projecting a new future at the same time, right? This is where I see us going with my narrative, right? Yeah.
One more question.
Ask away.
You are part of this show that's going to be at the Autry in the fall, and that seems to me to be a very definitive show of Indigenous futurism that they have planned. So my question is then, what is the future of Indigenous futurism? Where is this going to go with that?
We don't have time in that. I don't know. I think that's an open-ended question. I think there's going to be multiple ideas from every different voice or mind that wants to tackle it of where this can go. For me, I see it just blowing up, being really huge, defining new areas where artists can, and probably even a name change so that people aren't really thinking about just the future, right? But all the Jim Crow ones, and hopefully then also moving with just the Star Wars recognized stuff and go into it, because I was talking to my daughter, she's 12, she's learning ceramics and stuff, and she's interested. She loves Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but, you know, she also likes Hello Kitty, she also likes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and she also likes video games, and I'm like, that all is included. There's no, it's pop media, it's the stuff you grow in, and it's your experiences, so I think with that, there's going to be fresh, bright new minds that take it in a lot of different directions. I think it's just like, maybe like the beginning of the art movement, really, and it'll blow up into a pretty big thing. I see it going that way. That's my thoughts anyway. I think it's just now starting to be recognized. I think the fact that the Getty Foundation funded the Autry several $1 million to do the Indigenous Futurism exhibition speaks a lot to how big it's becoming and how it's needed to be recognized. Because I've also seen a lot of the comments and stuff that people are making about that upcoming Autry Indigenous Future exhibition of, you know, the Cara Romero photograph that I posted is so inaccurate. And, you know, we see it like a good opportunity to educate people, but, you know, it also kind of brings the riffraff out from under the rocks, you know, so you can't educate, you can't help everybody, but just that pushback is showing me that it's having an effect, right? It's making people think. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
So it seems like there's traditional myths from your culture.
Mhm.
It seems like I'm kind of looking at it like Star Wars is such a big myth.
Mhm.
It covers the whole world. Everybody knows about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, are you looking at like IFS, you're creating new myths?
Yeah, I mean, it can be. It certainly can be. I mean, if you study or learn about Bert easier, I mean, he definitely has created his own mythos and story and everything. I don't think that's the original idea behind it. It wasn't to appropriate Star Wars' process or their stories or the way they do things. It was really to take back what they had taken from us, really. That's the original. I mean, it could certainly go that direction. And it already has. And I think Rick Ortiz has definitely done that in a really awesome way. Everything he's done really original, and it could be its own sci-fi movie too, right? I'm not going that direction of making a whole mythos and all that. I tend to like to make individual pieces that make statements about an individual topic, right? But I didn't go up there for sure. But I do think that might be also one of the reasons why Star Wars is used more. You know, you don't see a lot of Star Trek. I've been asked to make Star Trek movies, but I'm like, let's talk about that. What will that even mean? Or will it mean anything? So, you know, the USS Enterprise got a pot, you know. So. But, you know, and a lot of other media, like, doesn't have the depth, I guess, of Star Wars. So in that regard, yeah, it uses that. And I think it's more attuned to more people know about that than, so it becomes more relatable. So in a lot of ways, it allows you, I have to approach people that normally would either A, be approachable or wouldn't be interested in native art or pottery, stuff in pottery, to begin with. So it's just one of the larger, I guess, ways to reach more people easily.